How's it going? Today's video, we're going to give you guys an update on Lost Origin. We'll look at all the Lost Origin singles and see where the prices are at right now. And spoiler alert, there's been huge price corrections for a lot of these cards. We're also going to be checking out the booster box and kind of compare it to where these gains have been absolutely crazy just in the past 3 months, going from $369 all the way up to $448. So a $100 gain in the last month. But not only that, but we're also going to look at the all-time data for Lost Origin, because can you believe that this set is literally not even 3 years old yet? Here's the date right here, September 8th, 2022. And so we're barely 2.5 years into this booster box set in history. So it's literally 2.5 years old and it's already going to hit $500. So welcome to the channel. This is MJ Okage. We talk about Pokemon all the time on this channel. So let's go ahead and jump right on into it. Here is the yearly data for Lost Origin. And if we look at the last month, you could just see how quickly it jumped up from April 14th, $382. And look at the volume. The volume was only like 1 to 3 booster boxes being sold every few days throughout April. And then look at all these booster box sales. May 6th, you had 15 booster boxes sold for $394. May 7th, 11 booster boxes sold for $399. May 8th, 13 booster boxes sold for $410. And the volume is still really strong for this booster box, with still 2 being sold at $458. Now, if we look at the last sales as well, you see 510, 500, and $419 right here on May the 10th. So booster boxes for Lost Origin are getting absolutely nuts. And I'm going to go ahead and add right here the booster boxes that I had sold recently, and the prices, I'm going to put them up to the right as well. It's absolutely kind of nuts that I was selling this booster box for $392. And I literally sold that. I completely sold a lot of my Sword and Shield investment. And so at the time, I really needed the money. I'm saving up for a new car. So I made a huge amount of gains. But again, from $392, I was selling, I think it was like early April. And so I did pretty well. I have a YouTube short too. I'll probably pin right here. I ended up selling 11.5, nearly $12,000 of my Sword and Shield investments, and I initially only had to put 3.5 thousand into them. So let's go ahead and look at the all-time data right here for Lost Origin. It came out, like I said, September 2022. So September, August. So originally in that first year, it basically started selling in the 130s, and it was kind of flat at 130, and that was in September 2023. We did get occasionally a reprint, and then we did get restocks towards like Black Friday, so that's why the price went down from the 140s and 130s down into December into the 120s, 2023. Then enter 2024 January. We see that the price started going up to the 140s, the 180s, the 170s, and here we have some TCG player data as well. And that's when we saw the booster boxes finally hit into the 200s, and that was springtime of last year, literally a year ago, because we're now in May 2025, and the booster boxes started hitting the 200s. And at the time, everyone was saying you should buy Scarlet and Violet. Booster boxes are way cheaper. You can still buy them for like $100 to $150, and that was true, right? And people were kind of missing out on Sword and Shield that didn't have any Sword and Shield. And at the time, I already had 5 booster boxes that I got for $115. I didn't really need to get any more. But things change, you guys, and so it dropped down back into the 200s during last summer. People say that there is a summer down price corrections happen in the summer, that Pokemon product isn't as bought as often during the summer because it's summer, people were on break, people were on vacation, and so people are spending their money elsewhere. And that kind of talks about the macro of Pokemon investing in collecting, is that maybe during the summer less sales are happening, and because of that, people who are selling their products maybe have to offer them at a discount because the demand is not there. at the previous price. And then here we go, November 3rd, 2024. The booster box was about $217. Come December, it shot to 245, and then January shot up into the 300s. And ever since then, it just kept going up from January 20th, 362. Price corrected down to the 330s, and then it was back on its way up. After those price corrections, they didn't last too long, and currently it's selling past the 360s, past the 370s, and into the 380s. And now on TCG Player, we have sales in the upwards of $449. So that is kind of like the history, right, of Lost Origin. For the first year to 2 years, it was about $150 and under, $128 to $150. And then those reprints happened and they went back into the 120s, even the 115s, like when I bought some more booster boxes. And so that just goes to show, like, when there's reprints and people are worried about reprints and price corrections, yeah, you're going to get price corrections. But again, you guys, this set is only 2.5 years old, not even 3 years old yet, and it's already hitting the 450s. So it just goes to show Surging Sparks, Twilight Masquerade, Paldea Evolved, even though they're under $300, it's important to note that there's still huge potential in the short term and long term to see some gains, because they can happen pretty quickly, 2.5 years, and we're off to the races. And so we're going to look now at the Pokemon cards right here in the set. We're going to look at pretty much the top 10 cards, and then a couple PSA 10s, most notably the Giratina V, because that's the most important card of the set, right? And so here we have the yearly data. It's up for the year, 17.7%. You could see after the Altar boom, it saw some price corrections from $476 down to $326 in September of last year. And then you could see in January, it was able to shoot back up from the 300s to the 500s. And then in January, February to the 600s. And it managed to get all the way up to $708. Now it's dropped from $708 all the way down to $566. So that's about a $140 drop since February, which was only about 2.5 months ago. And so it just goes to show how quickly and how volatile single cards and single card collecting or investing can go. If you're buying cards and they're really, really starting to spike up and trend just super high up in the upward direction, you really got to be careful. And my word of advice is always look for price corrections and always look for somewhat of a support line. You can see the past 3 months it's been going down. Even this past month it's dropped from $616 down to $566. So it would be a better buy at $566. But again, if you're looking to collect, just make sure that you have the finances to support your collection. Here we're going to be looking at let's look at the all-time data. Let's just get crazy about it, you guys, right here. Here's the all-time data. Again, this set came out back in September 2022. We started having some PSA 10 data recorded since then. This is all based off of eBay sales. You can see each individual sale, and it'll give you the listings, whether it was an auction or not, and who sold it. Like right here, we have PokeJet Collectibles bought this card for $6.99 back in January 28, 2023. So really expensive, right? So let's look at the data, right? Let's see, that first 6 months, you could see that it was settling around the 600s, 680s. And then shortly after that, it managed to get up into the 700s, the high 700s in July 2023. And then by the time December came around, it price corrected from the 700s down to the 500s. And then it was in the 500s until basically March of 2024, managed to get back into the 700s, reach its all-time high, right, previously, reach its all-time high of nearly $1,000 in May 2024. And then again, look, when you see such a high increase of demand and price increases, you know there's going to be some sort of price corrections for the next several months. So it price corrected from May all the way down into about August, September. So what is that? May, June, July, August, September. 4 months later, it price corrected down to the 600s. So that's about a $300 loss. And maybe we should keep that in mind. 4 months, from May to September, that's about 4 months. So maybe there is some sort of market trend or cycles every 4 months, right? And like people say, during the summer, there's price corrections. people's money is being allocated to different places, vacations, all types of stuff, right? And then it was in the 600s pretty much for 2024. It dropped down from the 700s, right, to the 600s mid 2024. And towards the end of 2024, we could see that it started getting back up to the 700s and then the 800s by the holiday season, November and December. Wow, this card managed to get all the way up to the thousands, which is a new all-time high for this card, over $1,000. And then towards the end of last year, it managed to finish the year out at around $1,197. Here comes January, $1,300, $1,400 in January 2025. Gosh, it just keeps going in January. $1,500, and then pretty much its peak was February, $1,625. Since then, it has price corrected real heavily. March the 1400s, April the 1300s, and now May the 1200s. So an argument could be made that it's dropped significantly. It's dropped about $300 just in the beginning of the year. So again, like we talked about summer, is it going to price correct in that summer season like we saw last year in July? It price corrected in May from $900 to $600, so that's about $300 difference. Could this go back into the 1000s? That would be interesting. Only we'll be able to tell in the next 4 months if it sees a stable support line, because right here this is pretty stable, right? Like somewhat 700s to the high 600s, that's somewhat stable, right? Even back here in 2024 January, somewhat stable in the 600s, 500s. Yeah, it was about in the mid 500s for about 3 months before it shot up into the 800s. So again, it's in the 1200s. We could see it go down into the low 1000s. Next, we have the Aerodactyl V. Here's the yearly chart for this card. It's up 0.6%, so nothing really crazy. But look how much it's recovered in the past year. Here's the Altenar Boom at 139, price corrected down to $93 in October, and now it's back up to $136 in May. So from $90 in November 2024 to now $136, you're looking at a $40 gain in the past 5 to 6 months. And again, you want to look for those support line. It looks like it's still trending in the downward direction and hasn't found a support line yet. Currently $136. Here's the Aerodactyl V. Let's go ahead and get crazy with it again with the all-time data. Look at this point. Look at this set came out right September 2022. People were buying the PSA 10 for $500. Doesn't that kind of remind you of Surging Sparks, right? Highly coveted set, highly anticipated set. And then you had those, you have the Latias card selling in the 600s. You have the Surging Sparks card in the 1500s for the Pikachu EX. And now it's about in the 800s. I'll have to do a video on that. And so, yeah, look at from $498 in 2022. We could see that it kind of had a stable support line right here in 2024 at around the high 100s to the low 200s. And then it went through a spike in June 2024 into the 300s. Price corrected again in October, November, all the way down from the 300s to the mid 200s. And by the end of last year, it managed to get back up to 276, and it was on its way up, trending in the upper direction. And then we see in January it got up to $327, February $353, and now it's price corrected down to $318. So pretty heavy price corrections. We could see the last month, right, in the low 300s, and still in the low 300s for the past month. If we look at the last 6 months, though, we could see that it had a run up to 364, and then now it's kind of on its way down to 318. So pretty decent price corrections for that PSA 10. Here we go with the Pikachu VMAX. I used to have this card in a PSA 10. Really beautiful, stunning card, honestly. And I low-key wish that I could have it back. But nonetheless, I got it for 110, and now it's back down to 146 for the PSA 10. So that might be a decent pickup now that it's had price corrections. We'll look at that in a second. But again, this card price corrected from $48 in June of 2024 all the way down to $30. So not too big. But look at this jump. September 2024, $32. And then February, $64. So it basically doubled in about, what is that? Probably like 7 months. And then now, the past 3 months, we could see that it topped out at $63 and now is down to $57. So nothing too crazy, just a 7% drop in the last month right now. 7% though, 61 down to $57. You know, if you bought that card for $61, it's still a $57 card, and in my opinion, still worth having in your collection. Here we go with the Pikachu VMAX PSA 10 data. We can see here's the PSA 10, $146 right here. Look how high it was back in February in the 180s and 190s, and now it's down to $146. Before that boom right here, last year, this card was under $100 throughout the tail end of last year, and then not until December and January started surpassing $120. Managed to get to $193, and now it's down to $146. So $50 price corrections in the past few months might be something worth considering for the collection or investment. We have the Pikachu V Trainer Gallery. Now the Trainer Galleries, the hit rates are a lot easier than the VMAXs and the alternate arts. However, they're still really cool cards with a lot of potential. 42% gain in the last year. We could see in September of last year, it was a $23 card, managed to get to $54 in January, and now it is a $45 card. So still really nice card, and it's still somewhat expensive at $45. It is a Pikachu card featuring red, so that kind of, speaks for itself. Here's the Rotom V card, 40% downturn for this card in the last year. Rotom's a really cool Pokemon, but it just doesn't have that much demand. Now, if collectors, I could see them trying to collect this card in the future, especially if we get new Rotom versions or new like special illustration Rotons or illustration rare Rotoms. I don't recall us having anything lately. We've had cards, but not full art cards. But yeah, it's down 40%. Last year it was selling for $44. Now it's selling for $30. So $14 drop in the last year. Here's the Galarian Berserker. Similar story. It's down 17% in the last year. Managed to get all the way up to $22. And look at those price corrections all the way down to now $15. 17% drop for that card. Here's the Gengar. Different story for these other Trainer Gallery cards that we're going to be looking at. 154% gain in the last year. It was about a $3 card. Look at the volume. You have like 50 to 100 to 200 copies being sold. So the price is going up to $18, and people are still buying this card up. It is now a $14 card. And I guess it's the most recent actual Gengar card. The Morty's Conviction kind of let a lot of people down. And so people are looking for any kind of variations of Gengars, collecting them, investing in them. Here's that Pikachu that also saw a big jump, 152% jump in the last year. Last year we were selling for $3. Now it's selling for $13 with a ton of volume. You have 100 copies being sold every few days. Again, you guys, these are cards that were relatively easy to pull, but they're still very popular. They got popular Pokemon species right there. Charizard, Gengar, and that other one that we saw, the Pikachu, right? 151% gain for this card. I remember I used to have it in a PSA 10. I guess I sold it. But it is price corrected from $13 to $11. However, a year ago, it was selling for only $4. And again, the volume, you're having 60 to 80 copies of this card being sold, which is helping the price go up. And so that is everything that we have for you guys today. But again, if we want to look quickly right here at the total set value, it is a $1,200 set value set, $449 for the booster box. And if we compare that to another popular set, Lost Origin's really popular, $1,200 set value, right? I'm going to show you guys something. We're going to go ahead and compare that with Fusion Strike, because why not? And see how much set value Fusion Strike has, because I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close. Actually, I'm wrong. Here we go. It is $1,470. I stand corrected. But at the same time, people were debating, is Lost Origin better than the Fusion Strike set? Because when Fusion Strike first came out, people preferred Lost Origin and even Brilliant Stars over Fusion Strike. And look at the booster box value, $649. that'll be the next video that we're going to talk about next. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.